Anxiety, depression, self-harm, bipolar disorder, and many more mental illnesses have been increasingly associated with teenagers today. We've all seen statistics and heard stories about these. In fact, a few years ago, I did a workshop on mental health first aid, which was a peer-to-peer counseling thing that helped me to understand and respond to red flags, which I spotted in friends, classmates, and even myself. I've got to say it helped me a lot. Just reading these signs, catching red flags, and getting help in time are incredibly useful skills because sometimes, sadly, it's just too late. Unfortunately, it's a very dark one today, but we've got the cheery, super brilliant Ms. Sindhu Wadhwa to enlighten us on mood disorders in teenagers today.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for that introduction.
What would you say is the most diagnosed psychological issue among teenagers today, and why would you say this?
So, right on top of diagnosed psychological conditions would be anxiety disorders. And American Psychological Association does a periodic survey about identifying stress issues, mood issues, and anxiety disorders in teenagers. And they found that 1 in 5 teenagers struggle with a proper diagnosis of anxiety disorder. So we're not talking about anxiety as in functional, adaptive, anxiety. It's on a continuum, right? So on one side, you have anxiety, which is like a factory setting of evolutionary mechanism. On the other side, you have debilitating, dysfunctional, very disordered state of anxiety. And a part of your question has been why this huge exponential growth. And it makes us all wonder about the contributing factors. And while most mental illnesses have certain factors that contribute to it, like it would be genetics, it would be family environment, it would be parenting styles, it would be early childhood traumas, social social support, environmental causes. But we are seeing this increase in this age group specifically now because we need to understand that this period of adolescence is a huge window wherein rapid changes to the brain, the body is happening. And during this phase, this remarkable, significant transitory phase, a young child, looks for identity formation. And it's a very important step in their psychological development and framework development. Now, what's happening is this identity formation happens with intersecting influences, everything outside. So we are growing from outward influences. Now, in the last few years, since 2015, there's been just so much of uncertainty, chaos, conflict, and unpredictability around us and distressing situations that we feel this identity formation may have suffered. To summarize this, look, the factors are going to always be internal and external, but co-occurring mental health issues like ADHD, other mood disorders, substance use, instances of cyberbullying, schoolyard bullying, all of these will increase the chances of you showing symptoms of anxiety disorder.
But would you also say that there's some genetic component to it as well?
Yes. So we often explain this like, it's a predisposition or it's a diastasis, which means your genetics are like a loaded gun you're carrying. The environmental factors pull that trigger. So genetic and also conditioning. So it's not just hereditary, but it's also conditioning and modeling by children when they look at their parents and caregivers around them.
Now, what are signs of anxiety in teenagers? What would you say are the common triggers?
So the signs and symptoms both need to be understood. There is a difference between the two. So warning signs are behavioral changes that can be observed by parents, other family members, teachers, and peers. Symptoms, on the other hand, are a teen's inner experiences, emotional and physical, as they struggle with anxiety. That's why both observation and conversation are necessary in order to take a teen's mental health temperature or weather check. So in terms of science, one would look at, performance dips in schools, sports, music, any pursuit that they were engaged with. And there is a very quick performance and a sudden performance dip. Then loss of interest in activities they used to enjoy. Noticeable drop in social interactions. We are not talking about general peer group changes that happens in teenage years, but noticeable drop in avoidance of social interaction. A lot of negative self-talk, such as, I'm so stupid, I'm so worthless, I just can't do this, I'm not good at anything. My life is pointless. General negativity about life and other people. Then changes in appetite, sleep, exhaustion, energy levels, disordered eating, either binging or absolutely avoiding eating, irritability, reactivity increase, impulse issues, not being able to respond to situations after thinking rationally. A lot of times we do see an increase in risky behaviors, but avoidance and general chronic avoidance seems to be one of the potential red flags that we want parents to notice or people to notice. Then there are symptoms of anxiety, which would be inside a teenager's mind. There is restlessness, racing thought, fears, worries, recurring feelings of worry and stress about everyday life, feeling out of control, powerlessness, constant sense of dread, focusing on catastrophic thoughts or negative thoughts or all or nothing thinking. We call them thinking errors. So suddenly you have complete all or nothing thinking. Either everything is grand and perfect or it's all terrible and nothing can be done now. Difficulty in concentrating, changes in focus, hard time relaxing. There is a constant muscle tension. Physical changes like stomach aches, migraines, digestive issues, sweating, shaking, nausea, panic attacks. All of those things are things that we want people to remember are signs and symptoms.
So now what would you say are common triggers for anxiety?
Triggers are difficult to answer because it is a culmination of various thinkings and distortions and frameworks that would eventually lead somebody to have an anxiety disorder. So there is not one. And if I were to say one, I would be oversimplifying and reducing the significance of understanding someone's life history.
Okay. Now, what are other mood disorders that affect teenagers?
We see a lot of cases of depression. We are talking about dysthymia, persistent mood disorder, low-lying but difficult period of pervasive sadness, hopelessness, inability to draw pleasure out of anything. So typical symptoms of shifting moods and this inability to have a stable mood state. That mood disorders are fairly common. Then we don't see a lot of cases of bipolar disorder. And we see also substance use disorders. So depression brought on by substance use, SUDs, so substance use disorders, which can trigger mood disorders or anxiety disorders. Then you have co-occurring neurobiological or behavioral learning issues, which can again, make anxiety and depression much more easier to get. And so those are typical things. In women and girls, we also see menstruating girls. We do see also PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is a debilitating form of premenstrual syndrome. These are some of the new mental health issues that we're noticing now.
There's been a strange phenomenon in recent years because on one hand, there's a lot of shame, denial, and stigma that's around seeking help for mental illness. But on the other, there's a lot of talking about it at the same time. So while someone may be ashamed to seek help, they're also frequently posting about feeling depressed, about feeling suicidal, and to be a little bit anecdotal here, most teenagers will have seen TikToks that look more like cries for help than jokes.
You're right. Yes. So your generation was born in digital era. You inherited the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. The conversations around mental health, has definitely helped in normalizing seeking therapy, seeking help, or in perhaps reflection. That's what we noticed in the beginning when the whole mental health influencers movement started. But with any movement, with anything that trends, the eyeballs, the zeal and the race for eyeballs and popularity is what led us on this dangerous trend, which is now all the mental health influencers. And these are not mental health professionals. They are romanticizing, trivializing, glamorizing the actual struggles of someone with a disorder or condition. We see this especially with eating disorders and obsessive compulsive disorders, mood disorders, and now trauma. The number of times I hear people talk about trauma, my parents are unhappy with me. My God, I'm being raised in a household full of trauma. I'm traumatized. That's really not what it is. We cannot trivialize people who go through actual trauma or the cases and scenarios of post-traumatic stress issues. Eating disorder is not cherry picking food or restrictive eating. It is it's a real struggle for people who've been diagnosed with ED. There is a lot of misinformation and harmful information being spread through these viral trends. I came to know of a particularly harmful and a very uncomfortable one on anorexia, started by this TikToker, young British girl. And she started talking about anorexia and what she eats and what she doesn't eat in a day. Now, through social contagion, which is a unique phenomenon of psychology, where within a social group, you almost have like a hysterical spread of similar symptoms. We had people, like thousands and thousands of people, girls, who reported to be suffering from exactly the same symptoms, exhibiting exactly the same things. Now, that is what is startling and disturbing for us, because there is a lot of misinformation going out there. There is a lot of, the way OCD is used as an adjective. So it has become Monica from Friends. It is like, oh, I cleaned up my cupboard. I'm a little OCD today. No, you're not. OCD is serious. It isolates you. It cripples you. It's hard. So I would love for the focus to be brought back on mental health. I have nothing against the medium, but I think digital literacy, I think social media hygiene, certain ethics and frameworks need to be considered now before this thing spreads. If a child can't talk to the parents, they would not really go looking blindly for any group. In fact, they can collaboratively look for better support groups. And that's what we want at the end of it. We want the child to be supported. We just don't want them to be joining a cult or a troll group or or possibly get bullied.
Now, the final question is, when would you say it's time for someone to get help? And what if a teenager resists getting help?
Okay, so whenever we talk about people seeking help for any mental health issue, we look at 3 or 4 crucial factors. One is and let's call it the 4 Ds. Okay, so the first is how distressed the individual is, how distressing is the situation for the individual. The second is duration. How long and how frequent has this been happening? The third is how much of dysfunctionality is being caused due to this. What are they avoiding or stopping from participating in? What are they doing more of? What are they doing less of? So we're looking at dysfunctionality. Then the fourth is a danger, which is are they a danger to themselves or to others? Are there harmful things around them that we need to protect them from? So the 4 Ds are very important. There is a crisis, and suddenly everybody then says, let's go to therapy, let's go to psychiatrist. I wish it could be explorative first. So that's that. And now coming to the second part of your question, why do young teens resist help? Look, we say this very often in mental health field. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer, only one. But the light bulb has to want to change. And this is a classic way of looking at why people resist, because they're not ready, because they don't want to change. And that need or that resistance to readiness could be because of various things. Look, in young years, especially the adolescent period, a lot of people could be thinking, hey, I don't think I need help. It's just who I am or how I am. They might also have heard from family or peer groups that I don't think therapy or medicine works. Or they've heard horror stories about therapists or stereotypes, worse, media perpetuated stereotypes about therapists and side effects of medicines. Or it is possible they have tried it and they didn't like it. They may think it's embarrassing, probably. Getting help is embarrassing. They could be feeling defensive. It's a common posture for kids, for teens. It's an understandable reaction from someone who's tired of repeatedly struggling or getting negative attention over something. So they could be feeling increasingly defensive, or they could be feeling hopeless. They cannot imagine that it's possible for them to feel better. What we need to do is, of course, you need to have connection over, before the correction. You need to have conversations about what is the barrier, where is the resistance. You need to reframe the approach to therapy. A lot of times, I find it helpful to find out from a child what would they need help in. So we are not talking anxiety, we're not talking mood disorders. I may pick up something from their everyday life. So say, for example, somebody plays football every day and they just started, losing interest in it. It's not the anxiety or depression I want to target first. I want to set the objective to that person going back to football. So when I reframe in my young client's mind like that, most likely they'd be interested because their immediate distress there is a solution to their immediate distress. So reframing is important. Accusatory tones have to be avoided. The number of times in India I've heard parents say this, that, I don't know what's wrong with my child. Can you fix him? And while I can see reactions of anxiety and, I'm seeing exaggerated responses from them about something very small. So there is that disconnect there. So I would hope for resistance to be reduced. I'd want more honest, authentic conversation, like I was talking to you earlier. We also want to make sure it's a collaborative approach. All teenagers want, during their developing stage, they want autonomy and more agency over decision making. I find it helpful to suggest 3 or 4 therapists to somebody who's come seeking to me. So a family member who's come to me for help, I would suggest 3 or 4 therapists so that they feel that, I don't have to go by what my aunt is suggesting. I'm going to go look at these 3, 4, then make a decision. So young adults love autonomy and agency. We want to encourage that. So making this approach to treatment a very strong collaborative approach is very important. And look, if you have a safe place and a open space and for conversations at home, your child will come and talk to you when they really are ready.
That's all the questions we've had. Thank you so much for...
You're always welcome. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Arif.